How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to episode 5 of the Sick Podcast with your host, That Leafs Fan. I hope you guys are ready for today because we are getting one step closer to the actual meaningful games being this season. Today, we're going to be recapping the game against the Leafs and the Wings, and then I'm going to get into the season preview. That's probably what a lot of you guys are more here to hear. Regardless, thank you guys very much for the recent support. Hope we can keep it up today. Producer, roll the tape.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With That Leafs Fan.
They score! They score! Holy mackerel, they score! Morgan Riley! Mo Riley! The Leafs have won it! They're going to the second round! Do you believe this? Holy mackerel!
The sickest Toronto Maple Leafs podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 5 of the Sick Podcast with your host, That Leafs Fan. I hope you guys are ready for today as we are one step closer to the meaningful games about to begin for the season. But before we get to that, we do have a game to recap between the Leafs and the Wings. This one, a much more back and forth tilt between the two Atlantic rivals. Starting out in this game, there's Nylander in there, there's Matthews in the game. It was a lot more of the team we're going to be seeing in the season. Nylander gets on the board, should I say, right off the bat, makes it 1-0 Toronto. The Wings come right back and answer with 2 goals of their own, one of them being a power play goal. Luckily for the Leafs, that is going to be the only penalty that turns out to end up in the back of their net. They took quite a few penalties. I want to say about 5 in this game, but that was the only one that the Wings were able to capitalize on. They ended up killing the rest, which is nice to see. And speaking of penalties and power plays, the Leafs get a power play goal of their own as Austin Matthews ties the game at the end of the first period, and that is how we head into the first intermission. Now, for those looking for a deep dive into this game, probably not going to have that. I got to be honest with you guys. I was literally telling the producer before, I've been really trying to get into these preseason games. In the beginning, I was able to write like Bibles of notes because I was like, oh my God, hockey's back. And now with just like a game or two away from the season, I keep looking at the schedule, looking at the date. When is the season starting? Because that's what we want to see. But regardless, we do have to finish the recap on this one. And the second period, something cool actually happened. So nephew Tyler, a.k.a. Tyler Bertuzzi, playing his former team, the Wings, ends up getting on the board, scoring his first goal as a Leaf. It is the preseason, so it's not his official first, but he does get on the board, makes it 3-2 for the Leafs heading into the second intermission. So we have a lead. Hopefully the boys can close it out. Wait, doesn't actually go into the second intermission. It is 3-3. The Wings tie the game once again. So a much more back and forth tilt situation in this game. Leafs getting one, Wings answering the bell, then they're taking the lead again, then the Leafs tied, and then they regain the lead. So a lot of lead changes in this one, a more exciting game than some of them we've seen in the preseason so far. We head into the third period. Not a whole lot going down in the third. However, the Leafs are completely annihilating the Wings in terms of shots. They outshot them 14-3. Unfortunately, not able to get it done. So the game does go to overtime where Willie, he's been there. He's been performing, and I hope he can be doing all of this in the season. Nylander scores, wins the game for the Leafs 4-3 over the Wings, winning the first game of a doubleheader as their next game, last preseason game, is going to be, as is the time of this recording, it's going to be out today. So the game is tomorrow. They got their last game of the preseason, and then finally on Wednesday, the real season gets underway. And so let's get into the keys of the game. I don't have a whole lot because, once again, it's the preseason. So my main takeaway from this is simply the boys look like they're ready to go. The Leafs look like they're set. A lot of NHL teams are pretty much getting to the end of it, figuring out their rosters. The season's about to begin. So that's the simple takeaway here. Again, it's preseason. Result does not matter. We got to see the young players try to make their mark on the management to try to gain their place. But the rosters are now looking to be what they are going to be on the opening day. So as for that, Not a whole lot of takeaways. Matthews, Nylander, I mean, the players that are supposed to look good do look good. They look like they are ready to get the season going. That's pretty much the only thing I take away from a type of game like this. I mean, we did have a heavy, if I had to say something, it would probably be something like they had a really good third period in like a tight game. They managed to take control of the game and close it out, which was nice to see. Bertuzzi getting on the board, that first line, I really hope can do some pretty special things coming into this season. Not sure what to expect if Bertuzzi is going to be staying on that first line. He's had some good moments. He's had some kind of silent ones. So it's going to be interesting to see. But there is a lot of games to play for them to figure it out and to mess with the lines and all that. But as I've been saying, this season is about to begin. Leafs Nation, let's get into a season preview. We're all here thinking the same thing. We've made a whole lot of changes since last season. We do this all the time. But at the end of the day, the top four is the top four. Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares. You're looking at, if I'm not mistaken, over $40 million of cap space just in those players or just around it. That's half the salary. So to be quite frank, whoever we brought in Bertuzzi, Domi, Reeves, Klingberg. It's nice, but at the end of the day, if the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be doing anything this season, it's going to be coming from the guys in the top four. These guys need to perform. That's why they kept it together. Many of us were ready to give up on the core. The management didn't. They kept it together. So they need to prove themselves. They have, in my opinion, a lot to prove. And people are like, well, it's the same team. Like, they don't got to prove themselves, this, that. I think they do have a lot to prove because they were on the brink of being separated. Like, it was really close from the core being completely split up. Like, I honestly, at the end of the second round last season, I was convinced. I'm like, okay, this was the last time we saw this Leafs team currently. This was like their last game together. Obviously, a lot of emotions flowing in that one. We finally get through the first round, and then it ends with a really disappointing show in the second round. Not able to do much, get cleaned in 5 by the Panthers. So, I don't know. I was thinking, maybe we don't have it. But clearly the management saw something we didn't, and we're willing to give it a second try. And you know what? I'm happy that we are. The reason I say that is because we have seen it time and time again in the NHL where there are teams that right as they're about to give up, like on the players they have, they keep it together. And then right after that, something great happens. For example, the Washington Capitals is a team who constantly played the Pittsburgh Penguins, who was like our Bruins, for example. And they kept losing in the second round, no matter the changes they made, no matter the management, this, that, they always had the same result. And as they were about to give up on it, they finally kill the demon, move past the second round, beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, slay the demon, slay the dragon is probably the better way to say it, but whatever. And they got it done. They held the cup. Do I know what that feels like? I've opened my Xbox a few times, played some franchise mode with the Leafs, got to see them hoist the cup. That's about as far as it goes. The first round, in reality, that's the furthest I've seen the team go, winning it once in 20 years. And a lot of people were talking about this. This is why I truly believe that the core was going to get split up, was that 7 years in a row making the playoffs, which was something we are not used to seeing. And there's just not a whole lot to show for it. Losses in Game 7, blowing series to the Habs. It was 3-1. We all know. Losing, 2 straight to the Bruins in 7. Losing to Tampa. And then finally this year getting it done. Oh my God, it's different. And we completely blow the tire. Lose it in 5. And pretty much sitting right where we were. We got an extra week of hockey, which was cool. But, we got an extra week of watching them lose, which sucked. So what do they have to do differently this year? I want to talk about Austin Matthews because I think that last year was arguably, not in terms of playoffs because he did show up in the first round, but overall, I think it was one of his more underwhelming season as a Leaf, in the sense that his shot didn't entirely look right. He did mention that he was struggling with an injury, or like some complications with his wrist. And I mean, it totally makes sense. Your wrist is a very key factor in how your release is going to be in terms of your shot. And to have any complications to that, I can totally see that getting in the way of you being who you are and being a great goal scorer. But seeing him in the preseason, he looks a lot more loose on the ice, which is nice to see. He just signed his fresh contract. He's going to be with the boys for the next 5 years, actually, because the new contract does not kick in until next season. So we're looking at another 5 years with Auston Matthews here. Marner's still there. Nylander's still there. So Matthews needs to level up this season. I think he will. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to guarantee that Auston Matthews is going to have a season and overall campaign like we haven't seen yet. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, what more can the guy do? He scored 60 goals. I think he has a lot more in the tank. I'm not saying he's going to get 90 or none of that, but I think that this season, Auston Matthews is going to click back into the form we were used to seeing, where every single year he got better. Last year was the first we saw him take a step back. And I think this year he's going to be taking 2 steps forward and showing us a new part of his game, because he has been working a lot on the two-way game, which is very important to become one of the elites of the league, in the sense that, like, you've seen Crosby do it. First came all the offense, and then you saw this guy just absolutely dogging it in the defensive zone and the offensive zone. And I mean, obviously we're not expecting Auston Matthews to be our defensive, like, god. But if he can play a two-way game, it's important, because that would mean when he's on the ice, even though we're in our own zone, he's going to be able to carry it out and then do what he does best in the offensive zone. So I think we're going to be seeing, I really hope, Auston Matthews flourish into a new portion of his career. And I really do believe that Auston Matthews has the potential of being the greatest goal scorer in our generation. I'm not saying in history, I'm saying in our generation. And I mentioned the stat before in the previous episodes. Auston Matthews has the most 5-on-5 goals since entering the league. Again, more than McDavid, more than Ovechkin, more than McKinnon. And I'm not saying that he is better than all these players. I'm simply stating a fact. You can go and look it up, search it on Google. Auston Matthews has the most even strength goals since entering the NHL. That is not something to look past, I don't think. We as a nation, Leafs Nation, this is the greatest goal scorer we've ever seen wear the Leafs uniform. By far. It's like not close. I can't even think of a player who was, it's just the way it is. Matthews is the greatest goal scorer the Leafs have ever had. And I think he has the potential to be even more than that. The guy has a lethal shot. He has a mind of his own when he's feeling comfortable in the game. And what I've noticed out of him out of the preseason is, once again, he looks very, very loose. So I think Matthews, and as it should be, he is the highest paid on the team, so he has to carry the weight. But I think he will definitely be seeing a part of, we're going to be seeing a part of his game that we haven't just yet seen before. I like to describe Auston Matthews as the engine of the Leafs. Because I do think there is another player who is the heart of the team. And I'm going to get to that right now. Mitch Marner. Again, another one who is extremely high paid on the Leafs, a part of the top 4. So these are players we need to see a lot out of. Matthews is the engine and Marner is the heart. When you see these two guys click together, nothing many teams can do about it, to be completely frank. And a lot of people are going to laugh at it. Yeah, but they went on a 2-on-0 against Carey Price and they couldn't score. Like, take an isolated situation, sure. Overall, McDavid and Draisaitl, maybe a better duo. Other than that, can't really think of two players that play together that could be better when they're at the top of their game. Mitch Marner's killing penalties, and we saw Matthews kill a little bit of penalties so far in this preseason, so that can be something to look out for. But these two players combined together absolutely need to be the driving factor of the Leafs' success this season, like it's been in the past, and especially now more than ever. Since they've decided to keep this core intact, these two need to show up this year if the Leafs are to do anything. And again, the Leafs have brought in a lot of different players. They look like they're trying to change their identity on the ice to a more defend ourselves mentality, like not going to have many people messing with us this year in terms of if you go and hit one of our stars or go and hit one of our rookies, you're not getting away with it. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to how are these two playing, Matthews and Marner, because if they're not playing good, chances are it's going to reflect on the Leafs record. Chances are it's going to reflect on their success. So we need these two to be absolutely dialed from game one all the way until hopefully a magical run. But we got a long way to go before we get there, to be completely honest with you. So yeah, the Leafs preview this season is going to be very similar to the ones we've seen in the past. The top four is the main aspect of this Leafs success. Obviously, we can step out of the core and expect nice things from Bertuzzi, Domi, Matthew Knies. I'm going to get to that. The overall team game, but the general success on pretty much almost every night is going to rely on the four, which is why they're getting paid so much. $41 million, if I'm not mistaken. That's like half the salary cap in 4 players. So you guys need to carry the weight. I'm not here to blame David Kampf for us losing. I'm not here to blame Samsonov for us losing. I'm not here to blame John Klingberg. If we lose, 99% of the time, the blame will be shifted to these players. And rightfully so. And when we win, I hope they're the reason we do. There's going to be nights where there's going to be some star performances from players we don't expect, but most of the time it will be coming from the top 4. And again, that's the way it should be. When you have half your salary invested in about like 10% of the team, those guys need to step up. And I think they will. We're going to have to see, though. Something I wanted to get into as well in terms of the season is the Leafs goalie tandem. So right now we're in a bit of I'd say a good problematic situation. We are between Samsonov, Joseph Woll, and Martin Jones. I personally think Samsonov is the obvious starter. He's going to be the starter. He proved himself last season, and I don't see why we wouldn't leave the net to him, at least to begin with. And I think between Martin Jones and Joseph Woll, that Joseph Woll will be the full-time backup goalie for the Leafs right now, with potential to eventually turn into a starter. Martin Jones, we saw some good games out of him in the preseason. Unfortunately, we cannot keep all 3 on the Leafs lineup, so one of them will have to be waived between Woll and Martin Jones, and I just think it's one of those situations where they're both looking good. I would much rather keep a hold of a young Joseph Woll over having Martin Jones. We might just lose him on waivers. If I were Toronto, I would definitely try to get a trade out of it. I mean, he's a league min goalie who's definitely capable of winning your team hockey games. So I think that it's going to be an interesting situation as to what they decide to do. If the teams have a half a brain on their shoulders, they're definitely not going to take any trades and just wait for him to hit the waiver and claim. However, I'm sure in terms of who has priority on the waive list could come into play. Whereas if there's like high-end teams that are looking for a goalie, like honestly, a team like Tampa Bay, the Bolts, I can totally see them. I think Martin Jones ending up there could be very beneficial for them, especially in this beginning part of the season where Vasilevsky's injured. So that it could be interesting. If the Leafs are able to get anything, I mean anything, any pick, any prospect, anything out of it, it's a win because we signed him for league min, and we are probably going to lose him if we put him on waivers. So we didn't really lose anything, but ideally, if we can get something out of it, it would be nice. Or maybe put him in a package deal, something like that, because he did play a few games in the preseason and he looked sharp. He looked like he was playing for something to prove, fighting for a spot. So it's gonna be interesting to see. Maybe they go the other way and decide to keep the 2 vets, take Samsonov and Martin Jones. I would be really pissed off if the Leafs were to let go of Woll. I don't even think that's an option. He's been constantly improving. He's proven himself in the AHL. He has been, I want to say, proving himself in the NHL as well. Like, he's showing he is very well ready to be playing. So I think that Joseph Woll should definitely be protected in this situation, which is why I think Martin Jones is just going to be the odd guy, the odd man out. And it's going to be interesting to see, though, for sure. So we're going to have to stay tuned for that. Some other players that we can talk about, we got Bertuzzi, we got Domi, we got Reeves, Klingberg. These are all new additions to the team. I think something that has been lacking so long in Toronto is an identity. Who are we? Who are you playing against when you play the Toronto Maple Leafs? Who are you playing? Is it a team that is just offense? Is it a team that can play a two-way game? Like, what kind of game do they play? And I think the signings this offseason kind of at least directed us towards this new identity of we're going to defend ourselves. We're going to be annoying to play against. It's not going to be fun on the ice. And if you decide to screw with us, we are definitely going to answer, which is something I have been yelling for easily, I can say like 3-4 years by now. You can go and check my TikTok videos. I've been talking about it for a long time. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been pushovers in the league for a very long time. And I think that has a lot to do with their results, because you saw it again last year's playoffs. The Leafs got absolutely pushed around by the Panthers and did nothing about it. The guy like suplexed Matthew Knies, Sam Bennett like suplexed Matthew Knies into the ground and got to walk away laughing at it, followed by the next game where he like punches Marner in the face, or was that Kachuk? But the point is, they got pushed around a lot. And I think it's very key that we finally decide to establish the identity of you're about to like play against a team that if you decide to do remotely anything, this team's going to let you pay for that. They need to be that team. Stanley Cup champions are all like that. Look at Vegas. Look at Tampa. Several years. The Bruins. The Blues were like that as well when they won. Like, we're talking about a proven fashion of hockey that has won several times in many different situations on many different teams. So I am very happy with the additions we got. It's going to be, I think we're also getting a bit too ahead of ourselves. All I want to see from them, like I said, even in a previous episode, I think the Leafs might have a worse overall record in the season. I still think they get it done going to the playoffs. And I think that's where the additions of the team are really going to flourish, in the sense that we're looking at a team that finally has, what do you want to call it, respect for ourselves. No more of that being pushed around. And that's in the playoffs is where that will come to, it'll really start to show, because that's where the games really matter. That's where it's a game of inches, a game of who can make the least amount of mistakes and who can capitalize off the other's mistakes. So it's going to be interesting to see, for sure. One player I really, really did want to talk about in the preseason, I think is probably, there's a few, like we saw Cowan was really fun to watch, but he's not going to be with us this season, and I'm glad he's not. Give him time to develop. No point of rushing him. We saw Fraser Minton, enjoyed watching him as well. But all Leaf fans, if we've been watching the games, we got to be honest, there's one guy, and that's Matthew Knies. Matthew Knies played in pretty much every single preseason game, regardless of what type of roster was starting, what squad was playing that night. He was in there. And I think what that shows is the Leafs are just trying to get this guy, get him games, because he barely played last season because he was still in the University League. So seeing him finally play on the team and making a pretty damn big impact, I think this is finally the left wing we've been looking for, guys. And the fact that it came out of our own development is so nice to see. It's so nice to see for once. We don't have to go and trade an arm and a leg and a pick in the first round and this. No, we have him out of our own development, our own system, and he's looking sharp. He is looking sharp. And I think he's going to be an absolute weapon this season. I think he is probably going to, he's not going to win it, I don't think. I would love to see him win it, but I think he has a serious shot at competing for Rookie of the Year. I don't see why not. I mean, obviously, you got guys like Bedard, Logan Cooley, by the way. Oh, that guy is filthy. But Matthew Nyes, if he can even just get in the conversation, again, probably highly unlikely that he wins it, but just like an honorable mention, I think he's very, very capable of putting a season together to get himself into that conversation. So it's going to be interesting. He's a player I'm very, very, very excited to watch, but it's going to be an interesting season, a very interesting season. The Leafs have one of the top teams in the Atlantic Division. Whether you're a Leafs lover, a Leafs hater, they do. And I'm not here to argue it. I'm here to state it as a fact. The Toronto Maple Leafs have one of the top teams in the Atlantic Division if they play to their full potential. You're going to be having the young teams like the Sabres, who are going to be kind of frightening to watch this year. The Wings are on the rise. The Sens are on the rise. The Bruins are still the Bruins, and the Bolts are still the Bolts. So it's going to be interesting. But the Leafs have a very, very high chance of winning this division if they just play their game. And that's the way I want to lead into the final part of this episode. And it's that the Leafs finally need to come into their own and start playing like the goddamn Leafs. Like enough of this letting the pressure from the outside creep into the room. And like, it's been one thing that's been frustrating me for such a long time. And it's that this team is it's too easy to read them. It's too easy to know what's going to happen before it happens. Like they need to just like grab the game in their own hands and decide how the game's going to go because they have the team to do it. Not every team in the NHL has that option. They got to fight for their win every single night. The Leafs have a team. They have an elite team. Love them or hate them, they have an elite team. Regardless of their recent playoff success or playoff failures, should I say, we know it's so frustrating as Leaf fans because we know what they are capable of and that they just always underwhelm our expectation. They never surpass it. Let this be the season where they surpass it. Let this be the year where the team is together. It's a family in there, guys. Like I know that if there's actually a Leaf player watching this, that would be hilarious. But if there is any, or if this somehow comes across to you guys, make it a family in that room. Every player. No disagreements in there. Get through it together. Y'all are a family in that room. That's the only way you're going to win. You guys have to be on the same wavelength throughout the season, throughout the playoffs, throughout whenever. That team needs to be in sync because if y'all are in sync, there is very few teams that can do anything about it. And I will say that with full confidence because it's true. We've seen it. When this team is playing at their full potential, it's almost, it pisses me off because they just don't do it consistently. That's the frustration with this team. And that's the frustration with the top four. And that's the frustration with the logo is that the Leafs are just the Leafs. Change that. Scrap that mentality. Anything that happened from yesterday and beyond, get it out of the picture. New season. I'm not even going to say that I'm just starting to realize how this really sounds like any Leaf fan ever. New season, new us. This is our year. Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I just want the Leafs to bring out their best on a more consistent basis and to stop throwing games away over lazy mistakes, over overshooting. I'm tired of seeing the Leafs shoot themselves in the foot is what I'm trying to get at. This team has a lot of potential, and that's why they piss a lot of us fans off is because they never live up to it. This year, live up to it because you are very capable. It could very well be a reality if you all decide to lock in, and it all starts from the top four and then bleeds throughout the rest of the lineup. Figure it out. Become a family in that room. Forget the media. Forget what I'm saying to you guys. Forget what anyone is saying. Y'all are capable. Y'all know you're capable. Get it together. Figure it out. The season starts on Wednesday. That is how I'm going to be ending this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy. It was one hell of a ride, as it always is with the Leaf. Ups, downs, and everything in the middle. But regardless, If you did enjoy, please make sure to share it to a friend, share it to a Leafs fan, share it to a Habs fan who might have a laugh about it. I don't know. Make sure to drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and thank you guys so much for listening to the Sick Podcast with your host, That Leafs Fan. I'm excited. The season's underway, guys. Lock in. It's going to be one hell of a ride. Producer, roll the tape. Thank you guys very much. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with That Leafs Fan on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.